the alpha's fated mate lost her wolf 18 years ago. What does it mean to be the alpha's fated mate when her wolf has been gone for 18 years? And can a bond of fate still exist after so many years of silence? Welcome back, everyone, to another emotional journey of destiny, identity, and love. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the stories waiting ahead. Thank you for spending your time with us and for continuing to support this channel. Your presence makes every story we share more meaningful. Tell us in the comments, do you believe a fated bond can remain true even when something essential has been lost for years? Now, our story begins beneath the moon, where one unexpected encounter is about to challenge everything they believe about fate. Your wolf is wrong. Hannah Reed said it quietly, but Alpha King Ethan Calloway heard every word. Around them, moon gathering continued beneath a clear October sky, silver lanterns glowing between tall pine trees while dozens of wolves crossed the open field beyond the lodge. The air smelled of cedar smoke, fallen leaves, and cold earth. Ethan should have been watching the ceremony. Instead, every instinct inside him had locked onto the woman standing nearly 40 feet away at the edge of the light. Hannah wore a simple charcoal coat over a cream sweater, her brown hair moving gently in the wind. She was pale, composed, and completely alone. Ethan had noticed her the instant he arrived. More accurately, his wolf had noticed her. Mate. The word had struck through him with such certainty that Ethan stopped walking. Lucas Grant, his beta, nearly collided with his shoulder. "What is it?" Lucas asked. Ethan did not answer. His wolf surged forward again, not with aggression but recognition so powerful that Ethan felt it in every breath. Mate. Ethan crossed the field. Conversation softened as people noticed where their alpha was going. Hannah saw him approaching and became still. No excitement entered her expression. No answering recognition. Only caution. Ethan stopped several feet from her. "Hannah Reed?" Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "You know my name?" I asked. "Why?" Ethan had faced territorial councils with less difficulty than he felt answering that simple question. "My wolf recognized you." Hannah's face lost what little warmth it had carried. Behind Ethan, someone whispered. Another voice answered too loudly. "That cannot be right." Ethan ignored them. "He says you are my mate." Hannah looked at him for a long moment, then delivered the sentence that silenced even his wolf. "Your wolf is wrong." Ethan stared at her. He has never been wrong about anything like this. There is always a first time. She turned toward the lodge. Ethan stepped after her, careful not to block her path. "Wait." Hannah stopped. "What exactly are you expecting from me?" "Nothing." The answer surprised both of them. Ethan lowered his voice. "I only want to understand why you are certain." A brittle sadness passed through her eyes. "Because a fated bond requires two wolves." The whispers behind them had become impossible to ignore. Ethan heard an older woman murmur, "Does he not know?" Lucas appeared at his side, his expression unusually tense. Ethan looked from him to Hannah. "Know what?" Hannah closed her eyes for one brief second. When she opened them, there was no embarrassment in her face. Only exhaustion, as though she had answered this question too many times. "I do not have a wolf." Ethan felt his own wolf push forward in immediate refusal. "Mate." "Every werewolf has a wolf," Ethan said before he could stop himself. Hannah's expression hardened. "And there it is." "I did not mean that the way it sounded. People rarely do." She pulled her coat tighter against the cold. Ethan glanced toward the field, where wolves moved freely beneath the moonlight. Hannah remained outside it, standing where the lantern light ended. "What happened?" he asked. She looked toward the forest instead of at him. 18 years ago, I went to sleep with a wolf inside me." Her voice became almost too quiet to hear. "When I woke up, she was gone." Ethan said nothing. Hannah finally met his eyes. So whatever your wolf thinks he recognizes, Alpha, there is nothing inside me to answer him. She walked away before he could respond. Ethan remained beneath the moon as the gathering slowly resumed around him. Lucas stepped closer. You should leave this alone tonight. Ethan watched Hannah disappear through the lodge doors. Deep inside him, his wolf had become strangely calm. Not confused. Not uncertain. Certain. Ethan had spent his entire life trusting that instinct. But now it was asking him to believe something everyone else considered impossible. Somewhere beyond those doors was a woman who had lived 18 years without hearing her wolf. And inside Ethan, his own wolf spoke once more, softer this time, but with absolute conviction. Mate. Hannah did not return to the field. She slipped through the lodge, ignored the warmth of the crowded dining room, and stepped into the quieter hallway leading toward the rear entrance. Her hands were steady until the door closed behind her. Then her fingers tightened around the railing of the wooden porch. 18 years, she thought. 18 years of learning how to answer questions without letting people see what the answers cost her, and one stranger had reopened everything in less than 5 minutes. Except Ethan Calloway was not simply a stranger. He was the Alpha King, which meant by morning half the territory would know what his wolf had claimed. Hannah descended the porch steps and followed the gravel path toward the small cottage where she lived with her Aunt Margaret. It stood less than a mile from the gathering grounds, tucked between maple trees already shedding their orange leaves. Hannah had chosen the walk instead of accepting rides years ago. Walking gave her something wolves took for granted, movement without comparison. She could hear distant howls rolling through the woods. Once, those sounds had made something inside her answer. Now there was only silence. Margaret was reading at the kitchen table when Hannah entered. The older woman looked over her glasses. You are home early. Hannah hung her coat beside the door. The gathering became complicated. Margaret studied her face. Alpha Calloway? Hannah stopped. How could you possibly know? Mrs. Bennet called. Hannah closed her eyes. Of course she did. Margaret poured another cup of tea and pushed it across the table. Hannah sat. His wolf thinks I am his mate. Margaret's hand froze around the teapot. Hannah. Do not. I was only going to ask what you felt. Hannah looked into the steam rising from her cup. Nothing. The answer came too quickly. Margaret noticed. Hannah did too. I felt nothing from a wolf, she corrected. No recognition. No pull. No voice. Nothing that matters. Margaret sat opposite her. You matter. Hannah gave her a tired look. That is a lovely thing to say in this kitchen. It becomes less convincing when everyone else is running beneath the moon. She regretted the bitterness immediately. Margaret had been the one person who never treated her differently after the silence began. I am sorry. You do not owe me an apology. Hannah wrapped both hands around the mug. At 36, she had built a life that worked. She managed the PAX community center, organized food deliveries for older residents, balanced budgets, repaired her own leaking faucets, and knew exactly which children needed extra snacks tucked into their backpacks before they went home. None of those things required claws or heightened senses. Still, every moon gathering reminded her of the invisible line separating her from everyone else. She had stopped attending moon runs years ago. She avoided mating ceremonies whenever politeness allowed it. During full moons, she closed her bedroom curtains before the first wolves shifted in the distant fields. It was easier not to watch people become what she no longer could. Maybe his wolf sensed something that remains, Margaret said carefully. Hannah's gaze sharpened. Do not give me hope because an alpha looked at me for 5 minutes. I am not. Good. Hannah stood and carried her tea toward the sink. Because hope was the first thing I had to learn how to live without. A knock sounded at the front door. Margaret glanced toward the clock. It was nearly 10. Hannah's stomach tightened before she understood why. Margaret opened the door. Lucas Grant stood beneath the porch light, keeping a respectful distance from the threshold. "Miss Reed," he said when Hannah appeared. "I apologize for coming this late." Hannah folded her arms. "If the Alpha sent you to bring me back, the answer is no." Lucas shook his head. "He specifically told me not to ask that." That surprised her. "Then why are you here?" Lucas held out a folded note. "He wanted you to know he will not announce a mate claim, summon you, or ask the council to approach you." Hannah did not take the note immediately. "Why?" Lucas's expression softened. "Because you told him there was nothing inside you to answer his wolf." He placed the note on the porch rail. "He said that means the next choice has to be yours." Lucas left without another word. Hannah waited until his footsteps faded before picking up the note. She did not open it. Not yet. She simply stood beneath the porch light, staring at Ethan's name written across the folded paper while something unfamiliar disturbed the silence she had spent 18 years learning to survive. It was not her wolf. Hannah was certain of that. It was curiosity. The silence had begun on a November morning when Hannah was 18. She remembered opening her eyes in a small clinic 12 miles outside Blackthorn and knowing something was wrong before anyone spoke. Rain tapped against the window. A fluorescent light hummed above her bed. Margaret sat asleep in a chair beside her, still wearing the green sweater she had worn the previous evening. Hannah stared at the ceiling and instinctively reached inward for the familiar presence that had lived beside her thoughts since her first shift. "Willow?" Nothing answered. Hannah tried again. "Willow." The name disappeared into an emptiness so complete that she sat upright. Margaret woke immediately. "Hannah? Where is she?" Margaret blinked. "Who?" Hannah pressed both hands against her chest as if she might physically find the missing connection. "Willow. I cannot hear her." A healer arrived within minutes. Then another. They asked Hannah to breathe slowly, to remember the previous night, to describe the last moment she had sensed her wolf. Hannah could remember cold air, wet pine needles beneath her shoes, voices somewhere in the forest, and fear rising so quickly that every thought had blurred together. After that, her memories broke into fragments. She remembered Margaret finding her near the tree line. She remembered being brought to the clinic. She remembered asking for Willow before exhaustion pulled her under. What she could not remember was losing her. The healers assured her that silence after overwhelming fear could be temporary. A few hours, perhaps. Maybe several days. Hannah believed them because she was 18 and had not yet learned how carefully adults sometimes arranged uncertainty into comforting sentences. She went home and waited. Every morning she called Willow's name. Every night she lay awake listening for the smallest response. 1 week became a month. A month became a year. The pack changed around her before Hannah understood that she had changed within it. Friends invited her to moon runs less often because they did not know what she would do while everyone shifted. People lowered their voices when she entered rooms. Some offered sympathy. Others offered theories. Hannah learned to dislike both. By 21, she stopped explaining. By 25, she stopped expecting anyone to ask without already believing they knew the answer. By 30, she could hear someone say wolf less without allowing her face to change. But she never stopped remembering Willow. 18 years later, Hannah stood alone in her bedroom with Ethan Calloway's folded note resting on the dresser. Morning sunlight touched the curtains. She had carried the note upstairs the previous night without opening it, then spent hours pretending its existence did not matter. At 6:30, she finally unfolded the paper. There were only 3 sentences. "Hannah, I believe what you told me. I will not ask you to prove anything. If you ever want to speak with me, I will listen. Ethan." She read it twice. No royal seal. No command. No mention of fate. Somehow that unsettled her more than arrogance would have. Hannah folded the note again and tucked it into the drawer beside an old wooden box she had not opened in years. Her fingers paused over the lid. She knew what was inside. A faded photograph of herself at 18, smiling beneath the summer sun after her first successful shift. A blue ribbon Margaret had tied around her wrist that day. And a handwritten page where Hannah had once recorded everything she loved about Willow because one healer had suggested memories might help call her back. Hannah opened the box. The photograph showed a girl who had expected her life to unfold according to rules she trusted. Hannah barely recognized her. She touched the blue ribbon. "You did not come back," she whispered. The room remained silent. Of course it did. Hannah closed the box, but before she could return it to the drawer, Margaret called from downstairs. "Hannah, someone is here from the community center." Hannah descended quickly and found 12-year-old Emily Parker waiting beside the kitchen door, twisting the sleeve of her jacket between nervous fingers. "Miss Reed," Emily said, "my first shift is supposed to happen soon." Hannah smiled gently. "That is usually good news." Emily's eyes filled with uncertainty. "What if I am scared?" Hannah felt the old wooden box still resting upstairs, holding the remains of a girl who had once believed fear meant weakness. She crouched until she was level with Emily. "Then you can be scared," she said. "And you can still be brave." Emily breathed out slowly. Neither of them noticed Ethan standing beyond the open screen door until he spoke. "I hope that applies to alphas too." Hannah looked up. Ethan remained on the porch, hands visible, keeping several feet between them. He had come alone. Her first instinct was to close the door. Her second surprised her. "That depends," Hannah said. "What are you afraid of?" Ethan met her eyes. "Getting this wrong." For the first time since his wolf had called her mate, Hannah did not immediately want to walk away. Hannah led Ethan onto the porch, but not into the house. It was a small distinction, one he seemed to understand without being told. Emily had already hurried home after making Hannah promise she would be at the community center that afternoon, leaving Margaret inside with the tactful excuse of making breakfast. Ethan stood near the porch rail while Hannah remained beside the door. Morning sunlight filtered through the maple branches, scattering gold across the wooden steps. "You said you were afraid of getting this wrong," Hannah said. "What does that mean?" Ethan looked toward the quiet road before answering. "My wolf recognized you immediately. Every instinct I have says I should trust him." Hannah folded her arms. "That sounds like you have already decided." "About what he feels, yes. About you, no." Her expression changed slightly. Ethan continued. "I do not know you, Hannah. Calling you my mate does not change that." She had expected certainty from an alpha. Possession, perhaps. Instead, he was admitting ignorance. "Then what happens now?" "Nothing you do not choose." Hannah almost believed him until a black SUV turned onto the road. It stopped beside the cottage, and Lucas Grant stepped out with an elegant woman Hannah recognized immediately. Victoria Hale had grown up among families who spoke of leadership as though it were inherited through posture. Her blonde hair was neatly pinned beneath a gray hat, and her cream coat looked untouched by the muddy road. Lucas appeared uncomfortable. Victoria did not. "Ethan," she called. "The council is waiting." Ethan's jaw tightened. "They can continue waiting." Victoria's gaze moved to Hannah. It was not openly cruel. Somehow, the careful assessment felt worse. "So the rumors are true." Hannah leaned against the doorframe. "That depends on which rumor entertained breakfast." Lucas hid what might have been a smile. Victoria ignored him. "The council was informed that the Alpha's wolf identified a mate at last night's gathering." "The council was informed too quickly," Ethan said. "I made no announcement. You know how these things travel." Victoria looked at Hannah again. "There is also concern about whether the recognition can be mutual." Hannah felt the old familiar coldness settle beneath her ribs. There it was. Not a question about who she was. A question about what she lacked. Ethan stepped forward. That discussion ends here. It cannot, Victoria replied. Not if Blackthorn is expected to recognize a Luna. Hannah turned toward Ethan. Luna? No decision has been made. Your wolf made one. My wolf does not make decisions for you. Victoria's eyebrows rose. That is generous. But this is larger than personal preference. The council has spent years preparing for your eventual mating. Stability matters. Continuity matters. She paused. And they already considered alternatives before last night. Hannah saw Ethan's expression darken. Victoria. She deserves to know. Hannah looked between them. Know what? Victoria answered. My family and the council have discussed the possibility of Ethan and me forming a political bond. For one sharp second, Hannah felt something unexpected twist inside her. It was not the mate bond. It could not be. She told herself it was embarrassment at standing in the middle of a conversation that had begun long before her. Ethan looked directly at her. I never agreed to it. But you considered it, Hannah said. Silence. Victoria gave a restrained sigh. An alpha king requires a Luna capable of standing beside him in every aspect of pack life. The meaning was clear without the insult being spoken aloud. Hannah had heard prettier versions of the same judgment for 18 years. She straightened. Then it sounds like you already have the woman you want. Ethan took one step toward her. Hannah, that is not what I said. No. It is what everyone around you will say. She looked at Victoria, then Lucas, then finally Ethan. Your wolf may believe I belong beside you. Your council believes she does. And I do not hear a wolf at all. Hannah opened the screen door. So until someone can explain why my opinion matters more than either of theirs, there is nothing to discuss. Ethan did not stop her. The door closed softly between them. Inside, Hannah pressed her palm against the cool wood and waited for footsteps, an order, anything that would prove his promise had been temporary. Instead, after several quiet seconds, she heard Ethan tell Victoria, do not ever speak about Hannah as though what she cannot do determines what she is worth. Hannah's breath caught. Outside, Victoria answered something too quietly to hear. Then the footsteps moved away. Hannah remained at the door long after the SUV disappeared, disturbed by a truth she was not ready to name. Ethan's wolf recognizing her had frightened her. Ethan. Respecting her might be far more dangerous. A Luna without a wolf is not a Luna. She is a liability. The words reached Hannah before she entered the council dining room, clear enough to stop her hand inches from the brass door handle. Inside, silverware touched porcelain and low conversation moved beneath the warm glow of chandeliers. She recognized Councilwoman Evelyn Mercer immediately. Hannah had known women like her all her life, people who could turn cruelty into concern simply by lowering their voices. Evelyn, Ethan said, and the warning in his tone silenced the table. Hannah could have walked away. 18 years of experience had taught her how. Instead, she opened the door. Every face turned toward her. Ethan rose from his chair. Victoria Hale sat 3 seats away, perfectly composed. Lucas Grant occupied the opposite side of the table and looked as though he wished he could erase the previous 10 seconds. Hannah removed her coat and handed it to an attendant. Please, she said calmly. Do not stop on my account. Evelyn's expression tightened. Miss Reed, I apologize if you misunderstood. I heard every word. Hannah took the empty seat beside Lucas rather than the chair waiting beside Ethan. A bowl of roasted vegetables sat untouched near the center of the table. The smell of rosemary and warm bread should have been comforting. It was not. Evelyn folded her hands. My concern is institutional, not personal. Hannah reached for her water. That makes it sound much nicer. Lucas lowered his gaze to hide a smile. Ethan did not. Hannah does not owe this council an explanation of her condition. Her condition affects succession, ceremonial responsibilities, and pack confidence, Evelyn replied. If His Majesty recognizes a mate, the council must determine whether she can fulfill the expectations of Aluna. Hannah set down her glass. And what exactly would you like me to demonstrate? Evelyn hesitated. The ability to participate fully in pack life. I manage the community center. I coordinate winter food deliveries for more than 200 households. I oversee emergency housing and youth programs. Which part of pack life have I missed? Silence settled across the table. Victoria spoke carefully. I do not think anyone questions your contribution. Hannah looked at her. They are questioning whether it counts. Ethan pushed his chair back. Enough. Hannah turned toward him. No. He stopped. She rose slowly, feeling every eye follow her. Do not defend me because your wolf chose me. Ethan's expression changed. Hannah continued before courage could become exhaustion. If I had walked into this room yesterday, before your wolf said mate, would you have cared what Councilwoman Mercer thought of me? Ethan opened his mouth, but Hannah shook her head. Do not answer quickly. I would rather hear something true. The room became painfully quiet. Ethan looked at the woman standing before him, not at the invisible bond his wolf insisted existed. He remembered the community records Lucas had shown him that morning, Hannah's name appearing beside food programs, school drives, elder assistance, and emergency funds year after year. He had lived in the same territory and had never known who was doing that work. No, he said finally. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Hannah had not expected the admission. Ethan held her gaze. I probably would not have noticed what she thought because I had not taken the time to notice you. Hannah felt the answer land differently than she expected. Then start there, she said. Before you decide whether fate made me important, decide whether you respect the woman standing in front of you. She collected her coat. Evelyn began to speak, but Ethan lifted one hand. Hannah paused beside the door. And for the record, she said without looking back, I lost my wolf. I did not lose my usefulness, my judgment, or my dignity. Then she left. Ethan remained standing as the door closed behind her. No one touched their dinner. Evelyn finally cleared her throat. Your Majesty, surely you understand the council must consider whether she is suitable. Ethan looked toward Hannah's empty chair. For the first time, his wolf's certainty seemed almost irrelevant. Mate had brought him to her. It could not tell him how to deserve her. You are asking the wrong question, Ethan said. Evelyn frowned. Then what is the right one? Ethan looked around the table. Whether any of us have given Hannah Reed a reason to believe we are suitable for her. Hannah was halfway through stacking folding chairs at the community center when Emily Parker came running through the front doors. Miss Reed, something is wrong. Hannah dropped the chair into place and turned. Emily's face had gone pale, and both hands were clenched against the front of her sweatshirt. Behind her, afternoon rain streaked the glass doors while several parents waited beneath umbrellas in the parking lot. Tell me what you feel, Hannah said. Emily swallowed. Everything is too loud. I can hear the clock in the office. I can smell Mrs. Carter's coffee from across the room. My skin feels strange. Hannah recognized the signs immediately. Emily's first shift was approaching faster than anyone expected. 2 volunteers moved toward them, but Hannah raised one hand. Give her space. Emily's breathing quickened. I cannot do this. Hannah lowered herself into a chair several feet away rather than reaching for her. You do not have to do everything at once. Look at me. Emily tried. What if I lose myself? The question reached somewhere Hannah kept carefully closed. She remembered being 18 and believing her wolf was inseparable from everything she was. She remembered the emptiness after Willow disappeared. You are Emily before your wolf comes forward, Hannah said softly. You will still be Emily afterward. How do you know? Hannah managed a small smile. Because who you are is bigger than what your wolf can do. Emily's shoulders loosened slightly. Hannah asked her to name 5 things she could see, then 4 things she could touch. A blue backpack. A yellow poster. Rain on the windows. The wooden floor beneath her shoes. Slowly, the panic released its grip. By the time Emily's mother arrived, the girl was breathing normally again. Hannah stood and finally noticed Ethan near the entrance. His dark coat was wet from the rain, and Lucas waited behind him holding a folder. Neither man had interrupted. Emily hurried toward her mother, then turned back. "Will you stay with me? When it happens?" Hannah's throat tightened. "If you want me there." "I do." Emily left with her mother. Ethan remained silent until the doors closed. "How long were you standing there?" Hannah asked. "Long enough." She resumed stacking chairs. "If you came to discuss last night, I am working." Ethan removed his coat and draped it over the back of a chair. Then he picked up 2 folded chairs from the wall. Hannah stared at him. "What are you doing?" "Apparently, working. You are the Alpha King. I have carried chairs before. The council will be devastated." A quiet laugh escaped him. Hannah almost smiled before catching herself. They worked in silence for several minutes. Ethan did not mention mate bonds, wolves, or Luna duties. He simply followed Hannah's directions until the room was cleared. That restraint made her more aware of him than questions would have. Finally, Ethan looked toward the doors Emily had disappeared through. "You knew exactly what she needed." Hannah wiped her hands on her jeans. "Fear gets worse when everyone around you treats it like a failure." Ethan studied her. "You learned that 18 years ago." Hannah's expression cooled. "Do not turn everything I do into a clue about my missing wolf." "I was not." "Then what were you doing?" Ethan considered his answer. "Trying to understand you." Hannah looked away. Rain drummed steadily against the windows. "Understanding me will not make your council accept me. This is not about my council. It will become about them the moment you call me your mate publicly." Ethan stepped closer, then stopped well outside her personal space. "Then I will not call you anything you have not agreed to be." Hannah searched his face for the impatience she expected from powerful men denied an easy answer. She found none. Lucas approached from across the room and handed Ethan the folder. "The council requested your response before tonight." Ethan opened it, read the first page, and his expression hardened. Hannah noticed. "What is it?" He closed the folder. "Nothing you need to deal with today." "That sounds suspiciously like deciding for me." Ethan looked at her, caught. After a moment, he handed her the folder. Hannah read the heading. "Ancient Mate Recognition Procedures." Her stomach tightened. Beneath it was a recommendation for a formal test to determine whether a dormant wolf could respond to a recognized alpha bond. Hannah lifted her eyes. "They want to test me." Ethan's voice was calm. "They want permission to ask." "And what do you want?" His answer came without hesitation. "I want them to learn that you are a person before you are a question they need answered." Hannah stared at him. For 18 years, people had looked at her silence and wondered what was missing. Ethan had finally looked at the same silence and asked what everyone else had failed to see. For the first time, Hannah wondered whether the dangerous thing about fate was not that it could choose for her. Maybe it was that Ethan was beginning to prove he would not. Ethan did something Hannah had not expected. He stopped asking about her wolf. 3 days passed without another question about Willow, the mate bond, the council, or the recognition procedure sitting unanswered on his desk. Instead, Ethan appeared at the community center shortly after 7 on Monday morning carrying 2 cups of coffee and a paper bag from the bakery on Oak Street. "Peace offering?" Hannah asked when she opened the door. "Breakfast," he said. Peace seemed ambitious. She looked at the cups. "How do you know what I drink?" "Margaret told Lucas." "Lucas told me." That sounds dangerously close to royal intelligence gathering. Then I should probably destroy the evidence. He offered her the cup. Hannah took it despite herself. They drank coffee while she checked delivery lists for the senior meal program. Ethan did not offer to solve anything. When Hannah complained that the center needed a new refrigerator, he did not promise one from royal funds. He simply asked how much it cost and how she normally raised money. The next morning, they walked along the half-mile trail behind the center before Hannah started work. Ethan talked about growing up with expectations attached to every decision he made. Hannah told him about Margaret teaching her to drive in an old pickup truck with a stubborn clutch. Neither mentioned fate. By Wednesday, Hannah realized she had laughed with him twice without guarding the sound. That frightened her more than his wolf ever had. Fate could be rejected as an idea. Kindness was harder to dismiss when it arrived every morning and demanded nothing. On Thursday, Ethan did not appear. Hannah told herself she was relieved. At 7:15, she checked the parking lot. At 7:30, she checked her phone. At 7:42, a message arrived. Council meeting. I am sorry. Coffee tomorrow, if you still want it. Hannah stared at the words longer than necessary before typing, 7 o'clock. Do not be late. His reply came almost immediately. Yes, ma'am. She smiled before remembering she had intended not to. That afternoon, she found him outside the community center helping Lucas unload boxes for the food pantry. Ethan glanced up. 7 o'clock tomorrow. I remember. Good. Hannah picked up a box. I would hate to report the Alpha King for poor attendance. My reputation would never recover. Their shoulders nearly touched as they carried the boxes inside. Hannah felt no supernatural spark, no hidden voice, no sudden awakening. Only warmth, ordinary and human, and somehow more convincing because of it. Later, they sat on the center's back steps beneath a pale evening sky. Ethan handed her a bottle of water. Can I ask you something that has nothing to do with wolves? That depends on the question. What did you want before everyone started telling you what you could not be? Hannah looked toward the maple trees. No one had asked her that in years. I wanted to travel, she said. I wanted to see the Pacific. I wanted a little house with a ridiculous porch and enough room for Margaret to complain that I lived too far away. Ethan smiled. Anything else? Hannah hesitated. I wanted someone who saw me before they saw what I was supposed to become. The smile left his face. That sounds reasonable. It apparently was not. Ethan looked down at his hands. I saw the bond first. Hannah turned toward him. Yes. I am trying to correct that. She studied his profile. Why? Ethan could have said because she was his mate. Hannah expected him to. Instead, he said, because I like the woman I have met since then. Her breath caught softly. Ethan did not move closer. He let the words remain between them without demanding an answer. Hannah looked toward the darkening trees, where distant wolves would soon begin their evening run. For once, their calls did not make her feel quite so empty. Coffee tomorrow, she said. Ethan nodded. Coffee tomorrow. Neither of them noticed Victoria standing across the parking lot beside her car, a sealed council document held against her coat. She watched them for several seconds before walking forward. Ethan, she called. He stood. Victoria's expression was serious rather than hostile. The council voted. Hannah's brief warmth disappeared. Ethan looked at the envelope. On what? Victoria's eyes moved to Hannah. The recognition ritual. Hannah became still. Victoria held out the document. They scheduled it for the next full moon. Victoria's announcement seemed to drain the warmth from the evening. Hannah stared at the sealed document in her hand while Ethan remained beside her on the community center steps. They scheduled a test without asking me? Hannah said. Victoria's expression tightened. The council calls it a recognition right. That does not answer my question. Ethan reached for the envelope, but Hannah took it first. She broke the seal and read slowly. The ritual would take place in the moon chamber 3 nights from now. Hannah would stand inside an ancient ceremonial circle while Ethan approached her in wolf form. According to the document, a true dormant mate should show some measurable response to the alpha's presence. Hannah read the final sentence twice. Failure to demonstrate recognition would permit the council to challenge her eligibility as Luna. She lowered the page. Interesting. Ethan knew that tone now. It meant she was hurt enough to become very calm. Hannah, I did not authorize this. Can they force me to attend? No. Victoria answered before Ethan could. But refusing will be interpreted by some council members as evidence that the bond cannot be verified. Hannah laughed once without humor. So I am free to refuse, and they are free to treat my refusal as failure. Victoria looked uncomfortable. That is one interpretation. Ethan took the document from Hannah and folded it once. Then they can interpret my refusal instead. Hannah looked at him. Your refusal? There will be no ritual. Something inside her wanted to relax, but 18 years of disappointment had taught her not to borrow safety from another person's authority. Do not cancel it because you were trying to protect me. Ethan frowned. Why not? Because then I am still the problem everyone is solving. She stood. First they decide I need to prove myself. Then you decide I do not. Everyone keeps deciding. Ethan went silent. Victoria watched Hannah with a different expression now, less judgment than recognition. Hannah handed the paper back. I will answer the council myself. 3 days later, the moon chamber was filled long before sunset. Hannah had agreed to attend, not to participate. The circular room stood beneath the oldest wing of Blackthorn Hall, its stone walls carved with generations of names. Silver lamps burned around a white marble circle in the floor. Councilwoman Evelyn Mercer waited near its edge. Ethan stood several feet away in a dark suit, visibly unhappy. Lucas and Victoria occupied the front row. Hannah entered alone. Conversations faded. Evelyn stepped forward. Miss Reed, the procedure is simple. You will stand at the center. His Majesty will shift outside the circle and approach. If your wolf remains dormant but present, the bond should produce a response. Hannah looked at the circle. Her chest tightened. For a second she was 18 again, lying beneath fluorescent lights while healers asked her to call Willow one more time. She had spent months obeying that request. Call her. Concentrate. Try harder. Again. 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 Hannah drew a slow breath. And if nothing happens? Evelyn hesitated. Then the council will have information it currently lacks. There it was. Hannah was not a woman in this room. She was information. Ethan stepped forward. This ends now. Hannah lifted her hand. Please. Ethan stopped immediately. That mattered more than she wanted it to. Hannah turned back to Evelyn. You want proof that I am his mate. We want clarity. No. You want my body to give you an answer because you do not trust mine. A murmur moved through the chamber. Evelyn's mouth tightened. The stability of Blackthorn cannot rest on sentiment. Hannah nodded. Then it should not rest on humiliating someone either. She looked around at the gathered council. For 18 years, people have asked me to prove what happened inside me. Healers tested me. Families whispered about me. Strangers decided what I could become. I spent half my life believing their questions were more important than my peace. Her gaze moved to Ethan. He did not approach. He did not rescue her. He simply stood where she had asked him to stand. Hannah looked back at the ceremonial circle. I will not step inside. Evelyn drew herself upright. You understand what refusal may mean? Hannah felt fear rise, but beneath it was something stronger. Yes. She turned toward the doors. It means the first answer you receive from me is one you cannot test. Ethan watched her walk away and made no attempt to stop her. Only after the doors closed did he face the council. His voice was quiet. Now you are going to learn the difference between recognizing someone's worth and demanding that she prove it. I am not something you test. Hannah's words followed Ethan long after she left the moon chamber. He stood before the council while the white ceremonial circle remained empty behind him, and for once, the ancient room seemed smaller than the people who believed its traditions gave them authority over another person's dignity. Evelyn Mercer broke the silence first. Her refusal leaves the council without verification. Ethan looked at her. You already received verification. Of what? That Hannah Reed will not surrender her judgment because we place tradition around it. Evelyn's expression hardened. That does not establish a mate bond. Neither does forcing her into a ritual she does not want. Victoria rose from the front row. He is right. Several council members turned toward her. She continued calmly. If the bond is genuine, humiliating Hannah will not strengthen it. If it is not genuine, humiliating her will not create it. Ethan glanced at Victoria with quiet gratitude. Evelyn gathered the documents from the table. Then perhaps Blackthorn should reconsider whether Miss Reed is suitable for the role being discussed. Ethan's wolf stirred, but Ethan did not need him to answer. Hannah never asked for that role. He left before the council could respond. Outside, night had settled over the grounds. Hannah was halfway across the courtyard when she heard the doors open behind her. She kept walking. Ethan followed, but he stayed several yards back. You do not have to follow me. I know. Then why are you? Because it is dark, your cottage is nearly 2 miles away, and I would like to walk with you. Hannah stopped. Would like to? Yes. Ethan stopped too. Not require. Not insist. Would like? Despite everything, the corner of her mouth almost moved. You are learning. Slowly. They walked beneath the maple trees without speaking. Fallen leaves shifted across the path in the cold wind. After several minutes, Hannah said, when I was 18, healers tested me for months. Ethan looked at her but did not interrupt. They asked me to call Willow while they watched my breathing, my pulse, my eyes. They brought other wolves near me. They used familiar scents. They played recordings from moon runs. Every time nothing happened, someone wrote something down. Her hands disappeared deeper into her coat pockets. Eventually I started feeling like the silence was something I was doing wrong. Ethan's chest tightened. Hannah. That room tonight felt exactly the same. He stopped walking. She turned toward him. I am sorry. There was no explanation attached to it. Hannah waited anyway. Ethan continued. I should have rejected the proposal the moment I saw it. I thought letting you answer for yourself was enough. I did not understand what they were asking you to relive. Hannah looked toward the dark trees. You could not have known. No. But I could have asked. The simplicity of his answer reached her more deeply than she wanted. What happens now? She asked. The council will probably challenge me. And if they demand proof? Again? Ethan held her gaze. They can demand whatever they want. You will never enter that circle unless you choose to. Hannah studied him. Even if that means they never recognize me? Hannah, I am beginning to think recognition is their problem, not yours. Something inside her softened. Not a wolf. Not fate. Trust, perhaps, in its smallest and most dangerous form. They reached the cottage gate. Margaret's porch light glowed through the trees. Ethan stopped there instead of following Hannah farther. Good night. Hannah touched the gate latch, then looked back. Coffee tomorrow? Surprise crossed his face before he smiled. 7 o'clock. Do not be late. I would not dare. Hannah walked toward the house. Halfway up the porch steps, she stopped. A sensation had moved through her chest so faintly that she wondered whether she had imagined it. Not a voice. Not even a sound. More like warmth passing through a room that had been cold for years. Hannah pressed a hand over her heart. "Willow?" Silence answered. Her hope rose instinctively, painfully. Hannah closed her eyes. No. She would not do this to herself again. She entered the cottage without looking back. Across the road, Ethan had already turned toward Blackthorn Hall. Neither of them knew that, miles away, Lucas Grant had opened a sealed archive box marked with the date from 18 years earlier. Inside was Hannah's original healer report. Across the final page, beneath a signature almost faded with age, one sentence had been underlined twice. "The wolf does not appear absent. She appears withdrawn." Lucas found Ethan in the Royal Archive shortly after midnight with Hannah's old healer report spread across a walnut table beneath a green reading lamp. The paper had yellowed at the edges, but the final sentence remained painfully clear. "The wolf does not appear absent. She appears withdrawn." Ethan read it again, then looked at Lucas. "Who wrote this?" "Dr. Samuel Warren. He served Blackthorn for almost 30 years before retiring." Lucas placed another folder beside the report. "He is still alive. He lives outside Pine Ridge, about 60 miles north." Ethan turned the page. Several later reports described Hannah as unresponsive to standard wolf recognition methods, but none repeated Warren's conclusion. Why was this never followed up? Lucas pulled out a chair. "It was. For about 6 weeks. Then Hannah's family requested that further evaluation stop." Ethan frowned. "Margaret?" "No. Hannah was living with her parents then. Margaret became her guardian later that year." Lucas opened another document. There is a note from Warren saying he believed Hannah's wolf had retreated after an overwhelming fear response. He specifically recommended patience, familiar surroundings, and no forced recognition procedures. Ethan stared at the words. The moon chamber suddenly felt even more unforgivable. And instead they tested her for months. Different healers disagreed with him. Lucas nodded toward the records. Some believed a wolf could not voluntarily withdraw that deeply. Others thought Hannah was suppressing the bond consciously. Ethan's jaw tightened. "She was 18. "I know." A sound at the archive door made both men turn. Margaret Reed stood there wearing a dark wool coat over her nightclothes. She looked exhausted. "You found Warren's report." Ethan rose. "You knew?" Margaret entered slowly. "Not all of it. Hannah's parents told me the healers had concluded Willow was gone. By the time Hannah came to live with me, she had already spent months being examined. She begged me not to take her to another healer." "So you stopped?" "I chose Hannah over an answer." Ethan lowered his eyes. He understood that choice now. "What happened in the forest?" Margaret's face changed. "I do not know everything. Hannah went to a gathering with several young wolves. There was an argument. Someone frightened her badly enough that she ran into the woods alone. I found her near the tree line hours later, confused and terrified. She could remember pieces, but never enough to explain why Willow stopped answering." Ethan looked back at Warren's report. Could her wolf still be there? Margaret hesitated. "Do not give her hope unless you know." "I will not." She spent years waking up every morning believing that might be the day Willow returned. Hope became another way for her to hurt. Ethan folded the report carefully. "Then Hannah decides whether she ever sees this." Margaret studied him for several seconds. "Your wolf chose well." Ethan shook his head. "That is not enough." Margaret's expression softened. "No. It is not." The next morning, Ethan arrived at the community center at exactly 7 with coffee. Hannah was waiting outside in a navy coat, her hands tucked into her pockets. "You look terrible," she said. Good morning to you too. You did not sleep. Ethan handed her a cup. Not much. Hannah watched him. What happened? Ethan could have protected her from the uncertainty. He could have waited until he had spoken to Warren and returned with answers. But Hannah had already told him what happened when everyone else decided what she was allowed to know. Lucas found your original healer records. Her fingers tightened around the coffee cup. What records? From 18 years ago. Hannah went completely still. Ethan kept his voice gentle. The first healer did not believe Willow was gone. The color faded from Hannah's face. What did he believe? Ethan took the folded copy from his coat but did not hand it to her. He believed she withdrew after whatever frightened you that night. Hannah stared at the paper. Is he certain? No. Ethan refused to soften the truth. It was his medical opinion at the time, not proof. Other healers disagreed. Hannah swallowed. Why did nobody tell me? I do not know yet. Her eyes filled with 18 years of questions all arriving at once. Ethan held the report loosely between them. This belongs to you. But you do not have to read it today. Hannah looked at him. Everyone spent half my life deciding what I could handle. Ethan extended the paper. Then I will not. Hannah took it. Her hands trembled as she reached the final sentence. For several seconds, she did not breathe. Withdrawn, she whispered. Ethan remained silent. Hannah pressed the report against her chest and looked toward the trees beyond the parking lot. Somewhere deep inside the place she had stopped searching years ago, there was still only silence. But now the silence meant something different. For 18 years, Hannah had believed Willow abandoned her. For the first time, she faced another possibility. Maybe her wolf had never left at all. Maybe she had been hiding. Hannah had barely finished reading the report when a message arrived from Blackthorn Hall. The council had called an emergency session. Ethan read the notice over her shoulder and looked immediately annoyed. You do not have to come. Hannah folded the report and slipped it into her coat pocket. That depends. Are they discussing me? Yes. Then I am coming. 2 hours later, she entered the council chamber beside Ethan, not behind him. Lucas stood near the long oak table with several archive folders arranged before him. Victoria occupied a seat near the windows. Evelyn Mercer watched Hannah approach with the controlled expression of someone already prepared to disagree. Miss Reed, Evelyn began, new information has raised questions concerning your condition. Hannah remained standing. My condition has a name. Her name is Willow. Evelyn paused. Very well. The possibility that Willow remains dormant makes verification even more important. Ethan's expression hardened. No. The single word silenced the room. Evelyn turned toward him. Your Majesty, if the original healer was correct, the recognition rite could determine whether the alpha bond is capable of reaching her. The rite is cancelled. You cannot dismiss centuries of tradition because Miss Reed finds the process uncomfortable. Hannah felt the familiar sting of the words, but Ethan answered before she needed to. I am not cancelling it because Hannah is uncomfortable. I am cancelling it because consent is not an inconvenience tradition gets to ignore. Several council members shifted in their seats. Evelyn looked toward Lucas. And if her wolf never responds? Ethan did not hesitate. Then nothing changes. Hannah turned toward him. For weeks, she had believed this moment would eventually come, the point when Ethan's patience collided with the possibility that she might never become what his world expected. Evelyn seemed equally surprised. Nothing? If Willow never speaks again, Hannah is still Hannah. Ethan looked around the table. She still spent years serving this pack when many of us barely knew her name. She still comforted a frightened child when everyone else saw a problem to manage. She still walked into this room after being judged by it and spoke with more dignity than some people sitting at this table have shown her. Hannah's throat tightened. Ethan continued. My wolf recognized her first. I will not pretend otherwise. But that is no longer the reason I choose her. Silence settled over the chamber. Hannah stared at him. Choose. The word should have frightened her. Instead, Ethan turned toward her and corrected himself before anyone else could speak. If she chooses me. Something inside Hannah softened so suddenly that she had to draw a careful breath. Evelyn closed the folder before her. And if the council refuses to recognize her as Luna? Ethan's voice remained calm. Hannah has never asked you to make her Luna. But if she becomes your mate, the issue becomes unavoidable. Then when that day comes, you can ask Hannah what role she wants. Ethan placed both hands on the table. Until then, there will be no ritual, no test, and no council member will approach her about proving the existence of her wolf. Evelyn looked around for support. Victoria spoke first. I agree with His Majesty. Lucas followed. So do I. One by one, enough council members nodded that Evelyn's objection became irrelevant. Hannah should have felt victorious. Instead, she felt strangely quiet. Ethan had just defended her without making her weakness the center of his argument. More importantly, he had chosen her without knowing whether Willow would ever return. Outside the chamber, Hannah caught up with him beneath the stone archway. Ethan. He stopped. You did not have to do that. Yes, I did. Why? He looked at her for a long moment. Because I finally know the difference between wanting the bond to be real and wanting you in my life. Hannah's breath caught. Ethan stayed where he was. I want you, Hannah. Not a future version of you who can shift. Not proof for the council. You. Her eyes burned, but she smiled faintly. You realize I am difficult. I have attended council meetings. Since I was 19. My standards for difficult are extremely high. Hannah laughed softly. Ethan smiled, but he did not reach for her. She appreciated that more than he knew. What happens now? She asked. Whatever you choose. Hannah considered the answer. Coffee tomorrow. 7 o'clock? 7. She walked away, carrying 18 years of unanswered questions with her. Yet for once, those questions did not feel like conditions placed on her future. Ethan had chosen her before Willow returned. Now, if her wolf ever found her way out of the silence, Hannah knew one thing with absolute certainty. Willow would not be returning to make Hannah worthy. She would be returning to a woman who had finally learned that she already was. The next full moon arrived beneath a sky so clear that every pine shadow looked painted across the ground. Hannah stood at the edge of the moon-gathering field with Margaret beside her, listening as families moved toward the open meadow. For 18 years, she had avoided nights like this whenever she could. Tonight she had come by choice. Ethan waited nearly 30 feet away with Lucas and Victoria, but he made no move toward her. He had promised that Hannah would decide what happened next, and even from across the field, she could see him keeping that promise. You can still go home, Margaret said gently. Hannah looked toward the moon. I know. That was precisely why she stayed. Around her, wolves began shifting for the evening run, then disappearing between the trees in small groups. Hannah felt the old ache rise in her chest. She remembered Willow racing beneath summer branches when they were 18, remembered the freedom of sharing one heartbeat with another presence, remembered the terrible morning when that presence vanished. Her fingers closed around the folded healer report inside her coat pocket. Withdrawn. Not gone. The possibility had followed her for days. Hannah had refused to turn it into a promise. She would not spend another 18 years waiting for one. I am going to walk, she told Margaret. Alone? Hannah glanced toward Ethan. Not exactly. She crossed the field. Ethan watched her approach. Coffee. Seems less complicated than this, he said. Coffee usually is. She stopped several feet from him. Would you walk with me? Surprise softened his face. Anywhere. They followed a narrow trail into the forest while the sounds of the gathering faded behind them. Ethan kept pace beside her without touching her. After half a mile, Hannah stopped in a clearing surrounded by tall pines. Moonlight spilled across fallen needles. "This looks familiar," she whispered. Ethan remained silent. Hannah closed her eyes. She could hear wind moving through branches, distant paws crossing leaves, Ethan breathing beside her. Then another memory surfaced. She was 18 again, standing among these trees while several young wolves argued nearby. Someone had mocked her for freezing during a difficult shift. Someone had told her she was weak. Hannah remembered trying desperately to prove them wrong. She had forced Willow forward despite Willow's fear. The memory tightened around her chest. "I did it," Hannah whispered. Ethan turned toward her. "Did what?" Willow was frightened that night. "I kept pushing her because everyone was watching." Hannah opened her eyes. "I thought being brave meant making the fear disappear." Ethan said nothing. She appreciated him for it. Hannah pressed a palm against her chest. "I am sorry," she whispered, not to Ethan. "I should have listened to you." Silence followed. Her eyes filled, but she did not call Willow again. She did not beg. She simply stood beneath the moon and allowed the silence to exist without treating it as failure. Ethan took one slow step backward, giving her more space. Then his wolf stirred strongly enough that his eyes briefly changed, catching the moonlight with an unmistakable silver glow. Hannah felt warmth move through her chest. The same warmth she had felt at the cottage gate, only stronger. She inhaled sharply. Ethan immediately lowered his gaze. "Do you want me to leave?" "No." Hannah's voice trembled. "Stay exactly there." The warmth came again. This time it carried something with it, not a word, but a sensation Hannah knew as intimately as her own heartbeat. Pine trees beneath running feet. Summer sunlight. A blue ribbon tied around her wrist. Hannah covered her mouth. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Willow?" For one suspended second, nothing happened. Then, from somewhere deep inside the silence, Hannah felt a presence turn toward her. Small. Frightened. Familiar. Alive. Hannah's knees weakened, but she remained standing. Ethan did not approach. He understood without being told that this moment belonged first to Hannah and the wolf she had mourned for 18 years. Hannah closed her eyes. She did not command. She did not demand proof. She offered the words she wished someone had given her when she was 18. "You do not have to come out until you are ready." Warmth spread beneath her ribs. Then a voice, fragile as breath against glass, touched the edge of her mind. "Hannah." Her eyes opened. Ethan saw the answer in her face before she spoke. Hannah laughed through her tears and pressed both hands over her heart. For 18 years, she had believed the silence meant goodbye. Beneath the full moon, she finally understood. Willow had never abandoned her. She had only been waiting to feel safe enough to answer. Hannah heard Willow again before they left the clearing. Not a full sentence this time, only a quiet warmth wrapped around a feeling she had almost forgotten: home. She stood beneath the moon with tears cooling on her cheeks while Ethan waited several feet away, giving her the space no healer, council member, or frightened 18-year-old version of herself had understood she needed. "She is there," Hannah whispered. Ethan's eyes softened. "I know." Hannah almost laughed. "Your wolf probably wants credit. He has been unbearably confident for weeks." A fragile laugh escaped her, and somewhere inside, Willow answered with a flicker of amusement so familiar that Hannah closed her eyes. She had imagined this reunion thousands of times during the first years of silence. In those dreams, Willow returned loudly, completely, restoring everything Hannah believed she had lost. Reality was quieter. Better, somehow. Willow was not returning as proof that Hannah had finally become whole. Hannah had already built a whole life without her. This was not restoration. It was reunion. When they returned to the gathering field, Margaret saw Hannah's face and stopped breathing for a second. Hannah crossed the distance between them and took her hands. She said my name. Margaret's eyes filled immediately. Willow? Hannah nodded. Margaret pulled her into an embrace, and Hannah held on tightly. Around them, conversations began to fade as people realized what had happened. Lucas smiled. Victoria pressed one hand over her heart. Ethan remained behind Hannah, asking for no place in the moment. Then Evelyn Mercer approached from the gathering pavilion. Miss Reed, if your wolf has awakened, the council should document the event and arrange a formal recognition. Hannah looked at her. Months ago, perhaps even days ago, those words would have tightened something inside her. Tonight they did not. No. Evelyn blinked. No? Willow spoke because she felt safe. I will not reward that trust by putting her back inside a room where strangers wait for her to perform. Evelyn glanced toward Ethan. Your Majesty? Ethan's expression remained calm. You heard Hannah. But the mate bond can finally be confirmed. Ethan looked at Hannah instead of the councilwoman. I do not need it confirmed. Hannah felt Willow stir softly. For the first time, the presence did not retreat. Ethan extended his hand, stopping before it reached hers. An invitation. Nothing more. Hannah looked at his open palm. Then she placed her hand in it. Warmth moved through her chest immediately. Willow lifted her head somewhere deep within Hannah's mind, and Ethan inhaled sharply as his own wolf responded. There was no spectacle. No flash of supernatural light. No ceremonial declaration. Only two people standing beneath the moon, hands joined because Hannah had chosen to close the distance between them. I feel him, Hannah whispered. Ethan's thumb rested motionless against her hand. And what do you want to do about that? She smiled through the last of her tears. You really have learned. I had a demanding teacher. Hannah looked around the gathering. For years, she had stood at the edge of these fields believing everyone beneath the moon possessed something that made them more complete than she was. Tonight she understood how wrong that belief had been. Willow's return was precious because Hannah loved her, not because a wolf determined Hannah's worth. She turned to Ethan. I am not ready to be your Luna. Then do not be. I am not ready for ceremonies. Then there will be none. And I am definitely not moving into Blackthorn Hall. Ethan considered that. What if it has a ridiculous porch? Hannah laughed. Nice try. He smiled. I can wait. Hannah shook her head. Do not wait. His smile faded slightly. She squeezed his hand. Walk with me. Understanding entered his eyes. That I can do. Weeks later, the first snow covered Blackthorn in white. Hannah still managed the community center. Ethan still arrived for coffee, although he had finally learned that 7 o'clock meant 7 o'clock, not 7:15. Willow grew stronger without being pushed. Some mornings she spoke. Some days she remained quiet. Hannah welcomed both. The council eventually withdrew its demand for recognition, and Victoria helped rewrite the old procedures so no future mate could be required to prove a bond without consent. One cold evening, Hannah and Ethan stood on Margaret's porch watching snow settle over the road. Ethan looked at her. Do you ever wonder why my wolf recognized you when Willow was still hiding? Hannah listened inward. Willow was quiet for a moment. Then warmth filled her chest, followed by 4 gentle words. He waited for us. Hannah looked at Ethan and smiled. I think I finally know. He did not ask for the answer. He simply offered his hand. Hannah took it. 18 years earlier, she had believed losing her wolf meant losing the future meant for her. Now she understood that fate had never been the voice commanding her where to go. Fate was the door. Love was the person who waited outside it without forcing it open. And Hannah was the one who finally chose to walk through.